Peace be with you, my brother, my sister. This is Mommy E, your favorite grandma. I've been making reactions to a number of Quran scholars like Sheikh Ahmed Didat, Zakir Naik, and many others. But this time, I will react to a Catholic Franciscan friar, Danny Horan. On his video, Christians should study the Quran. So, my brother, my sister, looks like this is an interesting topic. So, come and join me. One, two, three.
In the year 1219, at the height of the Fifth Crusade, St. Francis of Assisi and another friar, a companion, traveled to Damietta, Egypt. They traveled along with some crusaders with the intention of both preaching to the crusaders against the battles that were underway, as well as crossing the threshold, the border, to meet with Muslims on the other side of the battle line in a mission of peace and dialogue. St. Francis of Assisi was indeed perhaps centuries ahead of his time in understanding that the gospel call to Christian life meant letting nothing get in the way of relationship, even one's faith tradition. And he viewed not his Muslim sisters and brothers as enemies, but as siblings, as friends, as neighbors, as those he was called to love, and those he was called to engage with. Nearly 800 years after his death, the Second Vatican Council and the Church, in its decree Nostra Aetate on the Christian relations to non-Christian religions, writes that the Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in other religions, and spends makes a particular effort to talk about our relationship to our Muslim sisters and brothers. The Church regards with esteem, the document says, also our Muslim sisters and brothers. They adore the one God, living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, who has spoken to men and women, and they take pains to submit wholeheartedly to even his inscrutable decrees, just as Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself, submitted to God. Since in the course of centuries not a few quarrels and hostilities have arisen between Christians and Muslims, this sacred synod, that is, the teaching of the Second Vatican Council at the highest level, urges all to forget the past and to work now sincerely for the mutual understanding and to preserve as well as to promote together for the benefit of all humankind social justice and moral welfare, as well as peace and freedom. Catholic Christians in a particular way are called, as we hear both in the Second Vatican Council's teaching, official teaching of the Church, its highest teaching, as well as in the example of people like St. Francis of Assisi, this move to understand, learn about, and to engage in interreligious dialogue. In order to do that, we must understand other religious traditions, and in recent years there's been increased hostility, perhaps second only to those terrible events of the various crusades back in the Middle Ages, between Christians of the global West and Muslims, especially in the Middle East. And we see a lot of Islamophobia, a lot of calls of violence and fear, a lot of discriminatory, racist, and ethnophobic, we can say, perspectives and statements on television, social media, and elsewhere. I want to share with you a book that I just came to have a look at, a book that was just recently published this month in November of 2015, and that's this. It's the HarperCollins Study Quran. What's very important and interesting about this text is that not only does it provide a new translation in English, and I must say, of course, as many of you already know, that in the Muslim tradition, in Islam, you cannot have an authentic translation in any vernacular language. That our sisters and brothers of the Islamic faith believe that the Holy Quran is the verbatim word of God that was transmitted to the Prophet Muhammad, and it was done so in Arabic. And so while there can be translations, such as this one that has just recently been published, to help in study, especially for those in other religious traditions or those whose primary language is not Arabic, it's important to make that distinction between a study text and what is prayed and what is studied in a more formal way within the tradition. But what's unique about this text is not only is it translated well in English, it's a new translation that took 9 years in working together among the editors and translators and scholars to produce, but there's also a tremendous amount of commentary. I can show you, perhaps you can see in here, I can show you up close. There's great resources, great explication and exegesis that helps people, especially those who are not trained in Islam, those who are not Muslim, like myself, a Roman Catholic priest, a Franciscan friar, to understand better what's at the core of the Islamic faith. There are excellent essays that introduce both the history and of not just Islam, but of the Quran, the history of its translation and study, the methodological background to this text itself and what we have here, as well as maps and other resources that are really of great use. I can't recommend this highly enough, and you may not find yourself buying this particular text, but I encourage you, especially if you have questions about Islam, questions about what our Muslim sisters and brothers believe, to first engage in dialogue with those in your community in a peaceful, understanding, open way, as St. Francis of Assisi himself did. But also I would encourage you to read the text itself. Sadly, those who tend to grab the news headlines because of tragic acts of violence and terrorism, people like those engaged with the ISIS group in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere, Al-Qaeda and other terrorists, they practice something that is not at all supported by the Holy Quran. It is not reflective of the Islamic faith, of the Muslim faith. And our Muslim sisters and brothers are really done a disservice when, as a collective community and as a popular sort of social imaginary, that way of interpretation, a very distorted and unhealthy interpretation of Islam, is portrayed as the normative face of this religious tradition. St. Francis of Assisi and so many others, and those who bother to study the text itself, to try to understand the richness and the peace, the justice, the depth, the metaphysics, the worldview, the understanding of God, their own respect for the faiths of Judaism and Christianity, what they call the religions of the book. All these things are, deeper and richer and fuller than the violence and the discrimination that exists in our world would lead us to believe. So I encourage you, I'll put the link below to where you can find more information about this particular translation and its commentary. And I encourage you to take a look, to read with openness and seriousness, rooted, of course, in your own faith tradition, but to explore what our sisters and brothers in the religious tradition of Islam believe, and to appreciate the richness and beauty of their sacred text as well. May the Lord give you peace.
Amen. danquran.com. Thank you very much, Father Daniel P. Horan. This video emphasizes the stand of the Catholic Church. First, Father Horan mentioned about the teaching that was exemplified and acted upon by Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis of Assisi was the founder of the Franciscan orders. So he mentioned in the year 1219, when Saint Francis of Assisi and companion met with the Crusaders, as much as possible, encouraged them to not to fight, but to engage in a dialogue with the Muslims, because the life of Saint Francis of Assisi exemplified Jesus' teaching. The call of Jesus to relationship encompassing faith and beliefs. Therefore, Saint Francis of Assisi not only talked with the Crusaders, but also with the Muslims. As far as I know, Saint Francis of Assisi was the first Catholic who opened his hands with the Muslims, who opened the dialogue with the Muslims. Father Horan also mentioned the official teaching of the Catholic Church in the document Nostra Aetate in the Second Vatican Council. It states that it rejects nothing but regards with esteem Islam, because they also adore one God. The second call of the document of Nostra Aetate is that forget the past. Forget that division of the Catholic Church and the Islam that was started in the times of the Crusaders during the Middle Ages, but work now for mutual understanding and preserve as well and promote humankind justice, moral welfare, as well as peace and freedom. The document also states that Christians must engage in interreligious dialogue, understand other religion to get away discrimination that almost always results to hostility, division, violence, fear. As a first step to understanding other religion, in particular Islam, he recommended to study this HarperCollins Quran, which was launched this November 2015. The advantage of this Quran is that it is developed in 9 years by scholars and editors. The translation is very good and recommended for study because it contains many commentaries, explanations, and exegesis. Again, brother and sister, as always, I always end my reaction, my Catholic reaction to Islamic video in calling for respect and brotherhood and unity. And I always call for the first commandment is to always love God first. We must all love God first because we are all children of God. And we cannot love God who we do not see if we cannot love our neighbors. So the second commandment is love our neighbor as ourselves. So loving our neighbor entails the accepting our neighbors as they are We dare believe without judgment and especially with respect. We always emphasize that respecting brothers and sisters is plainly accepting, not necessarily meaning that we will also accept their religion. Accept them as they are our brother and they are our sister. Thank you very much, my brother, my sister. Again, I wish you peace. Assalamualaikum. Peace be to all of you. May the Lord bless the works of your hands. May the Lord bless your family. May He give you a longer life. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this video, please give me a big thumbs up. If you are not a subscriber yet, please hit that subscribe button. I hope to see you on my next reaction. God bless you. I love you.